I was sexually abused by my older sister when I was a child. It has ruined my life, and now I think about hurting myself. NSFW. This is something I've told almost nobody ever, and I'm breaking down writing this now. I really feel like I just want somebody to open up to understand me. I've never felt as much like ending it all as I do now. Sorry for the wall of text, but this is something very emotional to me that I've only ever opened up to 2 people, and now I'm telling a forum of strangers hoping they will give help and understanding. When I was 8 to 9 years old boy, my parents went through a messy divorce. For about 12 months, they sent me and my older sister, who was 4 years older than me, to live with our grandparents, who lived quite in a large manor in the countryside in Germany. They were quite rich, but they lived in a secluded area away from the rest of society, and we almost never left the manor and grounds during the entire year we lived there. Our teaching was done by our grandparents, but their English was not very good, and by an English-speaking tutor who would visit regularly. It was a very large house, and me and my sister used to play with each other a lot, usually things like hide and seek, and our grandparents were usually not in sight except around meal times. It was during this time that the sexual abuse started. My sister, who was 4 years older than me, was the one who started it. I don't want to go into details, but I had no sexual knowledge at all. I was reluctant, but she forced me into it. It started off as playing, but she escalated it and turned it into doing things with my body I didn't even know could happen. Sometimes it was painful, the things she did, and many times we had actual intercourse, although I didn't even know what it was called at the time. But she seemed to know everything and would tell me she was teaching me. When I refused, she would hit me and I would cry. She was rough with her hands, and many of the things she did I found painful. The only thing I didn't find painful but pleasurable was the intercourse itself. But even then I felt like she was forcing me into it. This continued for a whole year, and after a year we returned to live with our mother. I was very quiet after this and wouldn't talk much, kind of became reclusive from everyone. I would cry often, and the memories are still as fresh in my mind as they ever were. Sometime in the year after returning, I tried to talk to my mother about it. I wasn't sure if what happened was normal or not, but I knew it wasn't. I told my mother, and I remember the white look on her face as it went all pale. She didn't say much, but she said she would speak to my sister about it. I remember when she did talk to my sister about it, there was crying and screaming, but she never told me what happened. All I know is she never let me bring up the subject again, and told me I should not talk about it. I think in her mind, it was just something that happened, to be put in the past and forgotten. She wanted to pretend like it never happened, and didn't know how much anguish it caused me all my life. My sister also pretended like it didn't happen, but we both knew. I was cold to her and tried to avoid her, but slowly our relationship thawed and we became like normal siblings. When I was in high school, I was shy and timid and fearful of other people, especially girls. There was one girl I was exceptionally timid towards, and she was extraordinarily beautiful in my last year of high school. I actually came to know her, and I asked her out, and she said yes. I don't think she ever knew I had a crush on her. Anyway, that's not the point. We never had sex ever. At the start it was because I told her I wanted to wait until marriage or until the right time, and she believed it and agreed with me. The real reason was because my experiences have been burned into my head, and I've always been sexually traumatized. I'm scared to even try to masturbate, and I'm terrified of having sex because I still can't forget what my sister made me do, and how she physically hurt me and hit me when I refused. I sometimes cry at night when I think about it. I've been dating this girl for 2 years, and we never had sex once. I knew one day I would have to, or at least I would have to try, and I know she was becoming really impatient. At first in our relationship she was glad that I never asked it of her, I think. But I think there came a point where she wanted it. We are 20 years old, both of us, and yesterday we were in my apartment at night after a nice date together. I knew she was expecting us to have sex, but I couldn't go through with it. She thought it was because it was my first time, but she had no idea. I told her I have to tell her something I've never told anyone, something very personal and private, and the fact that I was sharing it with her meant she means a lot to me. I then told her everything about my sister, about what we did, how she forced me to have sex with her, about how it hurt me, how she hit me, how it's still vivid in my memory, how I still get urges to hurt myself sometimes, how I still can't let go. I then broke down crying, like a sad, pathetic sack. I broke down crying in front of her like I've never cried in my life. I hated myself and wanted to end it. At first she put her arm around me, but she didn't say anything. I don't know if she was trying to console me, but it was just too much for her to bear. After 10 minutes of me crying and sobbing uncontrollably like a mess, she hadn't said something the entire time. She got up and left. She didn't come back, and I knew she wouldn't, that we were over. There had been once a time I thought I would be with her forever, but I don't even care anymore. The pain and memories were stronger and burning harder in my mind than ever before, and I'd never cried like this or even opened up to anyone. I tried to open up to my mother when I was little and it backfired. I tried to open up to her and it backfired. I picked up the phone and tried to call my mother, but the line was busy. I tried to call again and again, but the line was busy. I called my sister next. She picked up. She could hear me sobbing on the phone, and she seemed concerned. "What's wrong? What's the matter?" At first she sounded like she genuinely cared what the matter was and wanted to help. Then I burst out at her on the phone in between sobs. "Why did you do it? Why did you do it to me? Do you know how much you hurt me?" I kept ranting incoherently, but I think she knew what I was talking about. First she was calm and said why was I upset, and she didn't know what I was talking about and I wasn't making any sense. But I could hear her voice begin trembling too, and I knew she had started crying on the other side too, and knew exactly what I was talking about. She knew exactly what she did and how she hurt me, and knew how it was hurting me at this moment, which is why she started crying. And then she shut the phone. I cried myself to sleep the entire night. I took a cold shower to try to calm myself. I know what I am. I'm a freak and I don't need to be alive. I've always had urges to hurt myself, though I never have. But now I also feel the urge to end my life. Nobody loves me or cares about my pain. Every person I turn to ignores it, even those who are supposed to love me the most. Even my sister, who is the source of all my pain and suffering, even her whom I love most in the world, has shut the door on my pain and doesn't care because she doesn't want to confront what she did. And why would she? Her life is perfect. She's got it going for her. She's got guys swooning over her. She's beautiful. Her life is set up. She doesn't need to worry about the miserable little sack of shit whose life she tormented and ruined forever. For her, that's just something that happened in her past. For me, I live it every day. My life will never be normal. I have nobody to turn to or nobody to talk to. That's why I come here. I really wish people could just understand my pain and know why it hurts so bad. Update 2. I was sexually abused by my older sister when I was a child. I now found out that even before that, she was sexually assaulted by our father. I handled it very poorly. NSFW, trigger warning, need support and help. Last month I posted this confession where I talked about how I was sexually molested by my sister during my childhood, and how it ruined the rest of my life to the point I still greatly suffer emotionally from it and have been considering hurting myself. I've learned a lot of frightening new things since then, including how my sister was abused herself, but I handled it very poorly and I think I might have completely ended all relations with my family, for better or worse. I'll detail the things that have happened since my last post. I was in a mess for the next few days. Sometimes I couldn't even think straight. I didn't want to go outside to face the world. I went to visit my GP. I had a long talk with him. Originally, I was visiting on the pretext of something else. I said I had been feeling fatigued and unwell, but I brought up what had happened. I told him everything without going too much into the details, because I said it was too painful for me to keep talking about it for a long period of time. I didn't tell him about my girlfriend, and I also lied when he asked if I have thoughts of suicide. I told him no, and I've never thought about hurting myself. I didn't want to go down that path where I thought I could be put on medications or treatment. I just wanted someone to talk to and listen. Later, I spoke to my girlfriend on the phone, the one who had refused to console me when I broke to her my past. What she told me stunned me. She said that she had known. She's been friends with my sister for a long time, but I didn't know they were that close. Apparently my sister had told her about what happened in the past, but presented it in a completely different light. The picture my sister painted was that it was just experimentation as youngsters, and didn't portray any element of abuse or taking advantage in it. My girlfriend said from what my sister had told her, she had no idea it had traumatized her severely, and had hurt me for so long. That's why she had no idea how to react when I told her it was the reason I couldn't have sex with her. I met up with my girlfriend, although I was hesitant. Then she told me something else that made me break up with her for good. She told me that during the past few months, where she had really wanted to have sex and kept pushing me towards it, ended up sleeping with someone else. She was crying and extremely apologetic and was begging me to forgive her. I wasn't mad at her and I didn't blame her. I'm honestly surprised she even stayed with me this long. I care for her as a person and I want her to be happy, but I told her we can't be together anymore because of the circumstances and we should end this permanently. I told her she deserves someone much better than me, who doesn't have my fucked up issues, and she can get someone better. Hearing that didn't help her and she didn't take it well. I meant it. The reason was not because she cheated, but because I feel she can do better. I returned to feeling the depressive, pathetic state I was in earlier. I shut myself out from the world again, and the horrible memories and thoughts of the abuse still haunting me. Most nights I would still cry and feel cold and alone. I called my sister again. I asked her why she did what she did. I asked her if she knew how much she hurt me, how much it hurt me all these years. My voice was trembling. I was telling her that I knew she remembered and she knew she hurt me. I kept asking why did she do it. I was on the verge of breaking down. She didn't respond, and I could hear her on the verge of tears as well, and hung up the phone. Next day I get a call from my mother. Apparently my sister went back to our mother's home and spent the night there. My mother said she was a complete mess, and was crying and breaking down. She said my sister didn't tell her everything, but she knew that I had called her and said something to her to make her like this. She demanded I go to her home immediately. I drove to our family home that day. My sister was in her bedroom. She was isolating herself, and I presume still upset. My mother was not too happy either. I had a long talk with my mother and I told her everything. I lashed out at her and emptied all my rage. I told her how I always hated her for ignoring the things my sister did to me, for making me stay silent about it, and pretending the whole thing never happened, while I suffered quietly all these years. Then she dropped the bombshell. My father had sexually abused my sister before that happened to me. It was the reason for the divorce, and it was the reason my mother sent us overseas a year to live with our grandparents. She said my father received no legal conviction, but as part of a plea bargain agreed to leave forever and gave her full custody of us and the house, along with a large sum of money. I was appalled. I asked her why she didn't push the charges and send him to prison. She said she didn't want to send him to prison. She said he was a broken man, was extremely remorseful, and she didn't want him to get abused or hurt in prison, but just wanted him away. She said she had still loved him even then. Couldn't believe it. I expected she had told me all this in an attempt to excuse what my sister had done, as if the fact she had been abused meant I should forgive her. I didn't see how this would heal my wounds or make me feel better. Even now, she was still covering for my sister and put her above me. I went to her bedroom and I spoke with her. She was on her bed, listening to music. It was obvious she had been crying heavily. Her hair was a mess. She was unusually very quiet and sullen. Usually she is always energetic and happy. Growing up I was the dull one and she was the cheerful, excited one. She'd always been like that. I'd never seen her like this. It was like her soul was shattered. I spoke to her. I told her I'd been told everything that happened. She didn't respond. I was trying to be calm, but then my voice got angry. I can't believe after all this, you are the victim. You know what you did to me, and now you are the victim and am ignoring me like I'm the bad one here. She just whispered, "I'm sorry," looking down. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I was starting to feel terrible, starting to hate myself. As if it was my fault I reduced her to this. "I don't know if I can forgive you. All these years you knew what you did was wrong. Yet you said nothing, you thought it didn't hurt me." She turned and looked at me. Her eyes were so red and filled with tears. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. Of course I knew it was wrong. How could I ever forget? I felt my anger towards her melting. I genuinely felt sorry for her, like I had hurt her. She tried to reach out to hug me, but I backed away a bit, then stayed still and let her hug me. After a bit, I hugged her back. I felt her suddenly become a bit happier. She said, "I'd never do anything in the world to hurt you. I would die for you. If I could give my life to erase all your pain, I would do it." I didn't say anything. Then a few moments later she says, I wish we could go back to the way things were. The way things were. Where I suffered all my life silently and pretended nothing happened while she had an amazing life and the world loved her. I pushed her off me. I told her I wasn't going to have any of that and this family had hurt me enough. The smile off her face disappeared. I told her just because I found out our dad did that to her doesn't erase my pain. She told me she knows and she didn't even want our mother to tell me. She didn't expect me to forgive me like that. I kept asking her about our dad and what he did. She was uncomfortable, but I kept pressing her on all the details, and she told me all the details of what happened, even though it was evidently very obvious she was uncomfortable doing so. Apparently it was more than one time, and it was mostly things like making her kiss and touch him there, but never any actual forced intercourse like what she had done to me. She kept trying to amend things, but I wasn't having any of it. I knew I was behaving and acting the wrong way, but I didn't care. I could feel the anger in me at everything, at the world, at everyone. She reached forward to hug me again, but I just pushed her away and stormed off. I could hear her break down crying. I've since left the house. I told my mother to not call me and I don't want to speak to them again. I've since returned to my own apartment. I've been ignoring every phone call I've been getting from them. I know I probably made things worse, like I'm throwing fuel on the flame, but I really want to just not have any contact with them. I don't know if I've made the situation with my family better or worse by all that I've done. I feel like this was a wound that was closed for them but open for me, but I just reopened it completely for them for my sake, and tormented them for nothing. I don't feel better at all, I feel worse in fact. I'm not sure if I hate myself more for the way I handled it, or hate them for knowing they deserved it for what they did to me. I know my life and family is fucked up. I really don't know where to go from this point. I'm considering just permanently breaking all ties with my family. I even called my girlfriend and told her I was willing to get back together. She agreed. I don't know if it was right or not. I really don't know about anything. I just feel my life is a screwed up mess and I keep heading in the wrong direction with everything. Edit. 15 missed calls from them today alone. I just now got a text from my sister. I love you. I feel like a terrible person. I don't know what I'm doing.